Stand still. I want to see how filthy someone like you looks in real crystal, Preston Harrington III sneered as he raised the goblet over Ayla Morton's head. The 14-year-old's grin widened as the wine crashed down her face, dripping onto her gown while guests sucked in their breath. Melissa Harrington clapped like he'd performed a magic trick. "Good boy, Preston. She fits the part now," she crowed, lifting her phone to film. Gregory approached, eyes cold. "Try not to stain the carpet," he murmured. "These galas weren't designed for your kind." Ayla didn't move, and none of them understood they had just drenched the one woman capable of collapsing their empire with a single decision. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow across the marble floors of the Harrington Foundation's grand ballroom. Hundreds of guests in designer evening wear turned as Ayla Morton made her entrance, her peach silk gown catching the light. She moved with the confident grace that had become her trademark in the business world, acknowledging the scattered applause with a practiced smile. At 41, Ayla commanded attention not through volume or flash, but through presence. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, offsetting diamond drop earrings that caught the light. She'd built Brightwave Innovations from nothing into a clean energy powerhouse, and tonight was meant to honor that achievement. "Ms. Morton!" Several business associates stepped forward to greet her, but before she could respond, a commotion rippled through the crowd. Preston Harrington III shouldered his way through the gathered guests, crystal goblet in hand. His prep school blazer was deliberately untucked, his tie loose, a calculated display of teenage rebellion that reeked of privilege. A few of his private school friends trailed behind him, phones already raised. Ayla noticed his approach, but maintained her composure, years of boardroom battles having taught her to read threatening body language. The boy's smirk told her everything she needed to know about what was coming. "Welcome to our party," Preston drawled, rocking back on his heels. His voice cracked with adolescent uncertainty, but his eyes gleamed with malice beyond his 14 years. Before Ayla could respond, Preston's arm shot forward. The red wine arced through the air in slow motion, splashing across her face and chest. The expensive peach silk instantly transformed into a spreading crimson stain. Droplets ran down her neck and arms, pattering onto the marble floor. Gasps erupted throughout the ballroom. Phones appeared from every direction, recording her humiliation. But it was the laughter that cut deepest. Gregory and Melissa Harrington's distinctive cackles rising above the crowd's shock. "Oh, Preston!" Melissa called out between giggles, her phone steady as she filmed. "You're terrible!" But her tone carried pride rather than reprimand. Gregory's deep chuckle joined his wife's. "Boys will be boys," he announced to their social circle, already spinning the narrative. "Just a bit of fun." Ayla stood perfectly still, feeling the wine seep into her clothes, her skin, her $1,000 updo. But decades of being the only black woman in rooms full of hostile white faces had taught her control. Her face remained neutral, almost serene, as she reached for a napkin offered by a horrified waiter. "What's wrong?" Preston taunted, high on his assumed immunity. "Cat got your tongue?" Ayla dabbed at her neck with deliberate calm. The silence stretched, making Preston's smirk waver. She knew this moment would define everything that followed, so she chose her reaction with surgical precision. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying in the tense quiet. "You've just clarified my final decision." Confusion flickered across Preston's face. He'd expected tears, anger, a scene he could twist to paint her as unstable. Instead, she moved past him with measured steps, heading for the stage where she was meant to deliver her keynote address. Wine dripped from her arms onto the stairs as she ascended. The spotlights felt hotter than usual, highlighting every stain, every drop. But Ayla's spine remained straight as steel as she took her place behind the podium. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady and clear. Hundreds of eyes locked onto her, phones still recording. I had prepared remarks about partnership, progress, and shared vision for the future. But recent events require a different message. In the crowd, Gregory Harrington's smile began to fade, as he realized this wasn't following his expected script. "Effective immediately," Ayla continued, "Brightwave Innovations is terminating all negotiations regarding the proposed $650 million strategic partnership with Harrington Energy Group." The ballroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Gregory's face turned an ugly shade of red. Melissa's phone lowered slowly as the implications sank in. "Our company values include integrity, respect, and dignity for all," Ayla stated, each word precise and cutting. "We choose our partners based on demonstrated alignment with these principles. Tonight has made it abundantly clear that this alignment does not exist." She could see Gregory starting to push through the crowd, his face contorted with rage, but she wasn't finished. To quote someone in this room, "Boys will be boys, and companies will be companies. We all make our choices, and we all live with the consequences." Her eyes found Preston in the crowd, his earlier bravado replaced by growing uncertainty. "I choose to walk away from toxicity, no matter how profitable the alternative might be." The silence in the ballroom was absolute now. Even the servers had stopped moving, trapped in the gravity of the moment. Ayla's wine-soaked gown continued to drip onto the stage, each drop echoing like a gavel fall. "I wish you all a lovely evening," she concluded, stepping back from the podium. She moved toward the stairs with the same measured grace she'd shown all evening, leaving the Harringtons to face the sea of cameras now turned their way. The carefully maintained facade of the family's social dominance cracked visibly as smartphones lit up with breaking news alerts. In an instant, their son's prank had cost them a deal their company desperately needed. The empire built on generations of privilege had just been shaken by a woman who refused to play victim to their games. The click of Ayla's heels echoed across the stage as she descended the stairs, her composure intact despite the wine still dripping from her ruined gown. The ballroom had erupted into a storm of whispers and frantically typing fingers. Phones tracked her every move, their artificial glow creating a constellation of light throughout the dimmed room. "Ms. Morton! Ms. Morton!" Reporters who had been covering the gala's social pages now shouted questions with renewed urgency, but Ayla maintained her steady pace toward the exit, neither hurrying nor hesitating. Gregory Harrington's voice boomed across the room. "This is ridiculous! Complete overreaction!" He was already on his phone, red-faced and gesturing wildly. "Get me Richard from the board. Now!" Preston stood frozen where Ayla had left him, the empty wineglass still dangling from his fingers. His previous smugness had evaporated, replaced by the dawning realization that his actions had consequences beyond his father's laughter. "Delete those videos! All of you! Delete them right now!" Melissa Harrington's shrill command cut through the chaos as she noticed dozens of guests uploading footage. But it was already too late. Devon Shaw burst through the lobby doors, his tablet clutched in his hands. As Brightwave's PR director, he had been monitoring social media feeds from the press room. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, tie askew, dark hair falling across his forehead. "Ayla!" He rushed to her side, falling into step as she continued toward the exit. "It's everywhere. The live stream has over 50,000 views already, and it's climbing by the second." She nodded, unsurprised. "Show me." Devon held up his tablet, scrolling through a tornado of notifications. Comments flooded in faster than the screen could refresh. Disgusting behavior from the Harrington brat. Who raises a kid to think this is okay? That calm reaction, though. She's a queen. Time to investigate the Harringtons' history with minority employees. Twitter's exploding, Devon reported, his fingers flying across the screen. Major news outlets are picking up the story. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, they're all running with it. The clip of you announcing the deal cancellation is trending even faster than the wine incident. They reached the lobby, where the gala's coat-check staff scrambled to assist her, despite their obvious shock at her appearance. One young attendant, a black woman barely out of her teens, handed Ayla her wrap with tears in her eyes. "You showed them, Ms. Morton," she whispered. "You showed them we don't have to take it anymore." Ayla squeezed the young woman's hand briefly before continuing toward the exit. Outside, camera flashes exploded like lightning as journalists swarmed the steps of the venue. "Ms. Morton, was this a racially motivated attack? Will Brightwave pursue legal action against the Harringtons? What message do you have for other executives facing discrimination?" Devon stepped forward, shielding Ayla as her driver pulled up in the black Tesla. "Ms. Morton will release a formal statement tomorrow. No further comments tonight." Through the tinted windows, Ayla watched the chaos recede as they pulled away from the curb. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from board members, industry colleagues, and journalists. She silenced it, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of the evening. "The Harrington stock is already dropping in after-hours trading," Devon reported from the seat beside her, still monitoring the fallout. "Their Asia markets opened 20 minutes ago, and it's not pretty. Gregory's trying to spin it as a tantrum on your part, but nobody's buying it. The video speaks for itself. Their PR team will push back hard tomorrow," Ayla said, watching the city lights blur past. "Have our legal department ready. Gregory won't take this lying down." "Already on it. But Ayla," Devon hesitated, "this is bigger than a canceled deal now. The public response, people are seeing this as a watershed moment. You're becoming a symbol." She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the dried wine pull at her skin. "I never wanted to be a symbol, Devon. I just wanted to run my company without dealing with their entitled garbage." The car pulled into her building's private garage, where the security team had already doubled their presence in anticipation of paparazzi. The private elevator whisked her to her penthouse apartment, where she finally allowed her shoulders to drop slightly. "Get some rest," Devon advised, checking his phone one last time. "Tomorrow's going to be intense. I'll have a full media strategy ready by 7 a.m. Alone in her apartment, Ayla finally peeled off the ruined gown, letting it pool on the marble floor of her bathroom. The hot shower washed away the wine, but couldn't erase the memory of those mocking laughs, the entitled sneer on Preston's face, the dozens of phones recording her humiliation. She had just wrapped herself in a silk robe when her phone lit up with an encrypted message from an unknown number. "Ms. Morton, my name is Eleanor Reed. I worked for the Harrington family for 27 years as their housekeeper. What happened to you tonight was not an isolated incident. I have documents, recordings, and evidence of things they have done that would destroy them completely. Things they've paid millions to keep hidden. I'm ready to share everything. Please meet with me. It's time someone finally held them accountable." Ayla read the message twice, noting the precise language and formal tone. This wasn't a crank message from an internet troll. Her instincts, honed by years of corporate warfare, told her this was genuine. She typed a response. "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., my office at Brightwave Tower. Tell security you're here for a private meeting with me." Eleanor's reply came immediately. "I'll be there. Thank you for standing up to them tonight. You're not alone in this fight anymore." Ayla placed her phone on the nightstand, mind already mapping out scenarios and strategies. Whatever evidence Eleanor held, It was clear this battle with the Harringtons was about to enter an entirely new phase. Ayla arrived early at Café Laurent, choosing a secluded corner booth away from windows. The small French bistro, tucked away on a quiet side street, was a carefully selected location, private enough for sensitive conversations, but public enough to ensure safety. She had already swept the area, noting only 2 other patrons absorbed in their laptops. At precisely 8 a.m., Eleanor Reed entered. Despite her 74 years, she moved with purposeful dignity, her silver hair neatly styled and her clothing pressed to perfection. Habits ingrained from decades of service. The weathered leather satchel she carried looked heavy against her slight frame. Ayla stood to greet her, noting the straight spine and clear eyes that suggested a woman used to bearing witness. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Reed." "Eleanor, please." Her voice was soft but steady as she settled into the booth. "After what I saw last night, I couldn't stay silent anymore. That boy," she shook her head, "just like his father at that age. Same cruel smile, same certainty that rules don't apply." The waiter approached, but Ayla waved him off with a polite gesture. Eleanor placed the satchel on the table between them, her hands resting protectively on its worn surface. "I started keeping records my first week there," Eleanor began, unclasping the bag. "The way they spoke to staff, especially people of color, I knew I needed proof. Nobody would believe it otherwise." She withdrew a stack of leather-bound journals, their pages yellow with age. 27 years of daily logs. Every racist comment, every firing without cause, every harassment complaint that got buried. Ayla opened the first journal, dated 1995. Eleanor's handwriting was precise, each entry marked with time, date, and location. The very first page documented Gregory Harrington Sr. berating a black groundskeeper until the man quit, then laughing about saving money on severance. "They never saw me as a threat," Eleanor continued, removing more items from the satchel. "I was just the help. Invisible. They'd say and do anything in front of me." She placed a small recorder on the table. 10 years ago, I started carrying this. The things they discussed over dinner." She pressed play. Gregory Harrington's voice filled their corner, discussing how to force out an Indian executive who'd discovered accounting irregularities. "Plant something in his office," he'd said. "Everyone knows those people can't be trusted with money anyway." Ayla's jaw tightened. "How many recordings?" "Hundreds, but that's not all." Eleanor produced a manila envelope stuffed with photographs. Private parties, board meetings, family gatherings, the things they'd laugh about, the deals they'd brag about breaking. They spent the next hour reviewing documents chronologically. Eleanor's meticulous organization revealed patterns of discrimination, financial manipulation, and calculated cruelty spanning generations. Photos showed Preston's father teaching him to mock domestic staff, encouraging his worst impulses. "But this," Eleanor said, finally withdrawing a thick folder, "this is what you need most." She spread out internal memos and financial documents. "They've been embezzling from their own company for years. That deal with Brightwave? They needed it to cover hundreds of millions in missing funds before the next audit." Ayla studied the papers, her business training spotting the careful manipulation of numbers. "They were going to use our clean energy partnership to hide their theft. Gregory Jr.'s gambling debts," Eleanor explained. "Melissa's shopping addiction. Private jets, hidden properties, bribes to keep other scandals quiet. They've built their whole lives on other people's broken dreams." More documents emerged. Correspondence proving the Harringtons had destroyed evidence in discrimination lawsuits, forged signatures on settlements, paid off judges. Eleanor had photographed every page, recorded every conversation, preserved every scrap of proof. "Why now?" Ayla asked gently. "After keeping this for so long?" Eleanor's hands trembled slightly. My granddaughter sent me that video last night. Watching you stand there dripping with wine while they laughed. She pressed her lips together. I saw myself 30 years ago, staying quiet while they hurt people. Staying quiet to keep my job, to protect my family. But seeing you refuse to break, it woke something in me. I'm too old now to fear their retaliation. Ayla reached across the table, covering Eleanor's weathered hands with her own. They'll try to discredit you. Try to paint you as a disgruntled employee. Let them try. Eleanor's voice strengthened. Every document is dated. Every photo has metadata. Every recording is time-stamped. I knew someday someone would need to expose them. I made sure everything would hold up in court. They spent several more hours reviewing the evidence. Eleanor's documentation was forensic in its detail. Dates, times, witnesses, consequences. She had even tracked which employees were forced out, documenting their struggles to find new jobs after the Harringtons blacklisted them. They destroy lives for sport, Eleanor said, showing Ayla a photo of Preston at age 6, throwing food at a maid while his parents applauded. They raise their children to think cruelty is their birthright. As afternoon light filled the cafe, Ayla finally sat back, processing the magnitude of what lay before her. This wasn't just ammunition for a corporate fight. It was evidence of decades of criminal behavior that had gone unchecked because of wealth and influence. I'll protect you, Ayla promised, meeting Eleanor's steady gaze. We'll do this right. Every document verified, every recording authenticated. And then we'll bring it all to light. Not just for what they did to me, but for everyone they've hurt. Eleanor nodded, relief visible in the slight softening of her shoulders. It's time someone showed them they're not above the law. That money can't buy them out of everything. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Brightwave's glass-walled conference room as Ayla spread Eleanor's documents across the polished table. Devon Shaw paced behind her, scrolling through social media reactions on his tablet. Marisol Trent, their chief legal counsel, methodically sorted the evidence into categories, her expression growing darker with each new revelation. The scope of this is staggering, Marisol said, holding up a particularly damning financial document. Tax fraud, embezzlement, witness tampering. They've been operating like a criminal enterprise masquerading as a corporate dynasty. Devon paused his pacing. The public's still solidly on our side after last night. That video hit 30 million views. Corporate watchdog groups are calling for investigations into... His words cut off as his tablet chimed. Then Ayla's phone buzzed, then Marisol's. Breaking news, Devon said, his voice tight. Gregory Harrington just filed a lawsuit. They're claiming defamation and breach of contract. He looked up, face grim. They're calling you emotionally unstable, Ayla, saying you manufactured a racial incident to void a binding agreement. Ayla stood perfectly still, watching the notifications flood her screen. Major networks were already running the story. The Harrington PR machine had mobilized with stunning speed. They're painting me as unstable, she said quietly, picking up her phone to read the headlines. Saying I have a history of volatile behavior and paranoid accusations. Her voice remained steady, but her fingers tightened around the device. Marisol grabbed the remote, turning on the conference room's wall-mounted screens. Every news channel showed Gregory Harrington on the courthouse steps, looking somber in an expertly tailored suit. Ms. Morton's shocking behavior has forced us to take legal action, he was saying, his practiced concern almost believable. Her unfounded accusations and erratic decision-making have already cost shareholders millions. We tried to handle this privately, but her continued instability leaves us no choice. Bastard, Devon muttered, furiously taking notes. He's trying to reframe the whole narrative. The screens split to show paid commentators debating Ayla's mental state. One suggested she had anger management issues. Another questioned whether she was truly qualified to run a major corporation. A third mentioned previous incidents, without specifying any details. "They're using every racist dog whistle in the book," Marisol growled. The angry black woman stereotype, the implications of incompetence. Her phone rang, then Devon's, then Ayla's. Partners wanting explanations, board members demanding meetings, journalists seeking comments. "Get everyone in here," Ayla ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Full executive team, now." Within 30 minutes, Brightwave's senior leadership filled the conference room. Some looked worried, others angry. All were fiercely loyal to Ayla. "The Harringtons just declared war," she began, standing at the head of the table. "They're betting they can bury the truth under lawsuits and character assassination. They think their money and connections make them untouchable." She gestured to Eleanor's evidence. "They're wrong." Chief Financial Officer James Martinez raised his hand. "We're already seeing market impact. 3 major partners have requested emergency meetings. Stocks down 12%. And dropping," added Sarah Chen, head of operations. "The uncertainty is spooking investors." Devon projected financial models onto the screens. "We can weather a 20% drop. Anything more starts affecting project timelines. Then we don't wait," Ayla said. "Marisol, how fast can we verify Eleanor's evidence? I've got 3 teams working already." "Initial assessment shows everything's authentic. The recordings are clean, the paper trail is solid. Give me 48 hours to have it all triple-checked." The room's energy shifted as Ayla outlined their counter-strategy. They would release the evidence systematically, building an irrefutable case. Eleanor would be protected. Every claim would be backed by multiple sources. "They think they can silence us with legal threats and media manipulation," Ayla continued. "But truth doesn't need spin. It just needs sunlight." Heads nodded around the table. Someone started clapping. Soon the whole room joined in, a spontaneous show of support that made Ayla's throat tight with emotion. The meeting continued past midnight, teams coordinating responses and securing data. Security protocols were upgraded. Legal preparations accelerated. Through it all, Ayla remained focused, directing resources and adjusting strategies as new attacks emerged. Finally, close to 1 a.m., she returned to her penthouse. The city lights sparkled below her floor-to-ceiling windows, beautiful and distant. She changed into silk pajamas, trying to unwind, but her mind kept racing through scenarios and contingencies. At 2 a.m., she still lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The whir of helicopter blades cut through the night, news crews circling, hoping to catch something they could use against her. Their searchlights occasionally swept past her windows, casting strange shadows. She grabbed her phone, checking the latest updates. More attacks. More planted stories. More carefully crafted lies designed to make her look irrational and dangerous. The Harringtons were mobilizing every resource, calling in every favor, determined to destroy her before she could expose their crimes. The helicopters grew louder, their blades chopping through the darkness. Ayla watched their lights dance across her ceiling, remembering Eleanor's words about staying quiet in the face of injustice. But she wasn't staying quiet. She wasn't backing down. Let them circle, she thought. Let them watch. The truth was coming, and all their money couldn't stop it. The helicopters continued their relentless orbit, filling the night with their mechanical heartbeat. Dawn broke over the city as Ayla stood before her bathroom mirror, meticulously applying her makeup. Each movement was precise, practiced, armor for the battle ahead. Her navy silk blouse and cream blazer projected calm authority. No trace remained of yesterday's wine stains or sleepless night. Her phone buzzed with a text from Devon. "Car's downstairs. Sandra Holt's team is ready." Sandra Holt wasn't just any journalist. In her 40-year career, she'd interviewed presidents and exposed corporate scandals. She was known for her unflinching integrity and laser-focused questioning. This would be no softball interview. Ayla's private elevator descended to the garage where her security team waited. News vans still crowded the street entrance, but they'd planned for this. The car took a private exit, emerging blocks away where no cameras waited. 20 minutes to the studio, her driver announced. Ayla reviewed her notes one final time, though she'd memorized every detail. This wasn't just about defending herself. It was about confronting generations of normalized discrimination hiding behind wealth and privilege. The studio lobby was deliberately empty when they arrived, Sandra's team ensuring privacy. A production assistant led Ayla to makeup, where the artist made minor touch-ups. 5 minutes, Ms. Morton, the floor director called. Sandra Holt appeared, elegant in charcoal gray, her silver hair perfectly styled. "Thank you for being here, Ayla," she said warmly. "Are you ready?" "Always," Ayla replied with a slight smile. They took their seats under the bright studio lights. The camera operators moved into position. Sandra adjusted her earpiece as the director counted down. 3, 2, 1. "Good morning," Sandra began, her voice carrying decades of gravitas. "I'm Sandra Holt, and today we're speaking with Ayla Morton, CEO of Brightwave Innovations, about an incident that has sparked national debate on privilege, accountability, and racial dynamics in corporate America." She turned to Ayla. "Thank you for joining us." "Thank you for having me, Sandra. Let's start with Tuesday night. You were at the Harrington Foundation Centennial Gala, being honored for your work in clean energy innovation. Walk us through what happened." Ayla's voice remained measured. "I had just arrived when Preston Harrington III approached me. Without warning or provocation, he poured a full glass of red wine over my head. His parents, rather than intervening, filmed the incident while laughing. And this was caught on video?" "Yes. Multiple guests recorded it." "What went through your mind in that moment?" Ayla paused, choosing her words carefully. "I thought about every person who's ever been humiliated by those who believe wealth puts them above consequences. Every professional who's been dismissed or degraded because they don't fit someone's image of authority. It wasn't just wine on my dress. It was a public display of contempt masquerading as entertainment." Sandra leaned forward. "You responded by canceling a $650 million partnership deal with Harrington Energy. Some critics call this an overreaction." "Those critics mistake composure for weakness," Ayla replied. "The incident simply confirmed what my due diligence had already suggested, that the Harrington organization's culture of entitlement and discrimination runs deep. It wasn't an impulsive decision. It was the right decision. The Harringtons claim you're using this incident to void a contract you were already planning to break. That's false. Our legal team has extensive documentation showing we were ready to proceed until that night. What concerns me more is how quickly they've tried to shift the narrative from their actions to my character." Sandra nodded. "They've questioned your emotional stability." "Yes," Ayla said, her gaze direct. "It's a familiar tactic. When confronted with misconduct, attack the person who exposes it. Paint them as unstable, unreliable, angry. It's especially telling that they chose these particular accusations, given their historical use against black professionals who challenge power structures. You're speaking about a larger pattern? I'm speaking about experiences countless others have faced. The young intern told she's too aggressive for asking questions. The executive dismissed as difficult for demanding equal treatment. The professional whose legitimate grievances are labeled emotional to invalidate them. The interview continued. Sandra probing deeper, while Ayla articulated the broader implications with unwavering clarity. Social media exploded with support. Viewers called in, many sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination and entitled abuse. 3 hours after the broadcast, Gregory Harrington held an emergency press conference outside Harrington Energy headquarters. His face was flushed, despite careful makeup, his usual polish cracking. "This is a calculated attack on our company's reputation," he declared, jabbing his finger at the cameras. "Ms. Morton is cynically weaponizing race to distract from her own contractual violations. We're filing additional lawsuits for defamation and will pursue maximum damages." But his aggressive tone backfired. Commentators noted how he embodied the very entitlement Ayla had described. His threats only amplified her message. That evening, as Ayla reviewed media coverage in her office, an encrypted email arrived from an anonymous address. The subject line read, "Internal Harrington documents, time sensitive." The attached files revealed frantic internal communications, emails ordering document destruction, memos about hiding financial records, evidence of widespread panic in Harrington's executive ranks. Ayla immediately called Marisol and Devon to her office. They spent hours verifying the file's authenticity, while additional documents kept arriving. Each new revelation strengthened their position. "They're scared," Devon observed, studying a particularly damning email chain. "They should be," Marisol replied, already drafting new legal filings. Ayla stood at her window, watching the city lights emerge as dusk fell. The Harrington Tower dominated the skyline, a monument to inherited power built on buried crimes. But monuments could fall. Truth could rise. She turned back to her team, ready to plan their next move. The evidence was mounting, and the time for hesitation was over. Ayla arrived at Brightwave headquarters before sunrise, her heels clicking against marble as she crossed the empty lobby. The whistleblower's latest files had kept her up all night, each revelation more disturbing than the last. Devon was already waiting in her office, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept either. Spread across her desk were printouts of internal Harrington memos, financial records, and encrypted communications. "Morning," he said, holding out a coffee. "You need to see this first." He pulled up an email from their primary banking partner. Ayla's jaw tightened as she read, "Due to ongoing concerns, we are temporarily suspending all transaction processing for Brightwave accounts pending review." 3 other banks sent similar notices, Devon said quietly. "Gregory's been making calls." Ayla set down her coffee, untouched. "How many partners have pulled back?" 7 major ones since yesterday. They're calling it a temporary pause, but... He shuffled through papers. "We're looking at about $40 million in suspended projects." Her phone buzzed, another board member requesting an emergency meeting. That made 5 since dawn. "There's more," Devon said, hesitating. "They've hired someone to dig into your past. Not just surface stuff. They're going deep." Ayla's screen filled with surveillance photos. Her leaving her building, having lunch with Eleanor, walking into Brightwave. All taken in the last 24 hours. "Private investigator," Devon explained. "But that's not what worries me most." He pulled up a draft article clearly prepared by Harrington's PR team. The headline made her stomach turn. "Brightwave CEO's Hidden History. Mother's criminal record raises questions." "They're trying to paint you as unstable by dragging your mother into this," Devon said, "implying the pattern of behavior runs in the family." Ayla's hands curled into fists. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to put food on the table, to keep their lights on, to give Ayla a chance at education. One desperate mistake 30 years ago, cashing a bad check during a medical emergency, and they wanted to use it as a weapon. "Get legal on the phone," she said. "I want restraining orders filed against their investigators by noon." Her office door opened, and Marisol hurried in, tablet in hand. The partners are panicking. Green Valley Solar is threatening to pull their entire contract. That's our biggest renewable energy project. Gregory's friends on their board, Devon muttered. Ayla's desk phone lit up, her assistant patching through another anxious board member. She let it ring. "Show me the latest whistleblower files," she said instead. Devon pulled them up on the main screen. Internal Harrington emails revealed frantic attempts to hide financial misconduct, orders to shred documents, conversations about offshore accounts. But most damning were the exchanges about Eleanor. They knew she had evidence and were desperately trying to locate her. "We need to move faster on analyzing Eleanor's records," Ayla said. "Get our forensic team." Her phone buzzed again. A text from her bank. Her personal accounts were now frozen. "They're trying to strangle us financially," Devon said, watching her expression. "Make it impossible to fight back." Ayla stood, walking to her window. Below, a photographer with a long lens quickly ducked behind a car. They were getting bolder. "Pull up our emergency reserves," she ordered. "How long can we operate if they freeze everything?" Marisol ran the numbers. Maybe 3 weeks at current burn rate. Less if more partners pull out. Another board member called, then another. Their faces appeared on her screen, demanding answers, wanting assurances, questioning her judgment. "Schedule the board meeting for 2 p.m., Ayla said finally. "But first, get Eleanor somewhere safe. They're going to go after her next." The morning blurred into afternoon. Financial reports showed mounting pressure as Gregory's allies flexed their influence. Credit lines were suspended. Vendors demanded updated payment terms. Partners sought contract revisions. Devon worked his media contacts, trying to get ahead of the smear campaign. But Gregory's reach was extensive. Stories about Ayla's mother began appearing on smaller news sites, each more sensational than the last. "They're calling it the Morton family legacy of instability," Devon reported grimly. "It's trending." Ayla kept her focus on Eleanor's evidence, cross-referencing it with the whistleblower data. The pattern was clear. Decades of systematic discrimination, financial fraud, and cover-ups. But they needed time to prove it all legally. Time they might not have. By late afternoon, Brightwave's stock had dropped 12%. Shareholders were flooding their investor relations team with panicked calls. The board meeting loomed closer. "Your mother's old arrest record just leaked," Devon said softly. "They're spinning it into a whole narrative about—" "I know what they're doing," Ayla cut him off. She'd seen this playbook before. Attack the family, question the background, destroy the credibility, make the victim look like the villain. Her security team reported more photographers outside. News vans began gathering. Social media exploded with competing hashtags: Yadru Stand with Ayla versus Yadru Morton Meltdown. At 5:47 p.m., an anonymous text arrived. "They're planning something bigger tonight. Be ready." The amber glow of sunset painted long shadows across Brightwave's executive floor as Ayla stood at the window of her secured conference room. Below, the first protesters had begun to arrive, their competing signs visible even from the 30th floor. Security had already sealed off the building's perimeter. "They're gathering faster than we anticipated," Devon said, joining her at the window. "Police estimate about 300 so far." Ayla turned away from the growing crowd to face the room. Eleanor sat at the massive conference table, surrounded by stacks of documents she'd protected for decades. 2 investigative journalists from major newspapers were already reviewing files, while Marisol coordinated with a team of lawyers via video conference. "Let's begin categorizing everything," Ayla announced, taking her seat beside Eleanor. "We need this organized before sunrise." The elderly woman's hands trembled slightly as she opened her weathered leather satchel. "I kept everything sorted by year," she said, her voice steady despite her shaking fingers. The discrimination cases are in the red folders. One of the journalists, Sarah Chen from the National Times, picked up the first red folder. These employment records show a clear pattern. They systematically denied promotions to minority staff while fast-tracking less qualified white employees. That was just the start, Eleanor said quietly. The real proof is in those wage documents. 20 years of paying Black and Hispanic workers less for the same jobs. They covered it up by giving different job titles to the same positions. Marisol's team began scanning and cataloging each document, creating digital copies that couldn't be destroyed. The conference room hummed with the sound of scanners and urgent whispers as they worked through the evidence. Financial crime section is even worse, reported Marcus Rodriguez, the second journalist. He spread out a series of internal memos across the table. Look at these transfer orders. They were moving millions through shell companies, then writing them off as operational losses. Devon organized the evidence on a digital board, creating clusters. Discrimination, wage theft, tax evasion, embezzlement, hush money. Each category grew larger as they worked through Eleanor's files. Tell them about Christmas 1998, Eleanor said suddenly, her eyes fixed on a particular document. The room fell silent as she continued. They fired Maria Torres 2 days before Christmas because she complained about sexual harassment. She had 3 children, couldn't make rent. They blacklisted her from every major company in the city. Ayla reached for Eleanor's hand as the older woman's voice cracked. That was when I started keeping records. I couldn't stop what they were doing, but I could remember. I could prove it happened. The lawyers on screen were furiously taking notes. These harassment settlements alone will trigger multiple federal investigations, one said. The pattern of cover-ups makes it criminal conspiracy. Outside, the crowd had doubled. Police lights flashed as officers set up barricades between the opposing groups. Chants echoed up from the street. Stand with Ayla. Meeting Harrington Strong. We need to release this simultaneously across multiple platforms, Devon advised, checking his phone. The Harringtons have already tried to injunct 3 smaller outlets from running stories about them. Ayla nodded. Coordinate with all major networks. Time the releases so they can't suppress them all. Eleanor pulled out another folder, this one filled with photos. These are from the company parties. See how they made the Black staff serve drinks? Even ones who were executives. They thought it was funny. The journalists photographed everything, cross-referencing dates and names. Marcus found a pattern in the financial documents showing how the Harringtons had planned to use the cancelled $600 million deal to cover massive losses from failed ventures. They were desperate for that partnership, he said. Without it, these offshore accounts are going to collapse. That's why they're fighting so hard. Hour after hour, they pieced together the evidence. Eleanor's perfect memory provided context for each document, transforming dry data into human stories. She remembered every person who'd been humiliated, every family that had suffered, every career destroyed by the Harringtons' systemic abuse of power. As midnight approached, the protests outside grew louder. Security reported scuffles breaking out between the groups. News vans lined the street, their lights creating a carnival atmosphere around the growing chaos. The embezzlement schemes go back 3 generations, Marisol reported, examining trust fund documents. They've been hiding money from regulators since the 1960s. Devon organized the final digital files, creating secure copies on multiple servers. If they try to hack one release, the others will still go live. The lawyers drafted summary briefs for regulatory agencies. The journalists prepared their stories, carefully fact-checking every detail. Eleanor watched it all, occasionally adding crucial details from her decades of observation. They never thought anyone was watching, she said softly. They never thought the help would remember. At 11:45 p.m., Ayla reviewed the final dossier. Every claim was documented, every accusation supported by multiple sources. Eleanor's meticulous record-keeping had created an airtight case. "Send test files to all participating outlets," she instructed Devon. "Make sure their secure channels are working." The journalists made final edits, strengthening their leads. Legal teams prepared for the inevitable counterattacks. Below, the crowd had swelled to over 1,000, their competing chants merging into a constant roar. At midnight, Ayla began forwarding the final dossier to trusted journalists across the country. Each would have time to verify and prepare their stories before the coordinated release at sunrise. "It's done," she said, sending the last email. "By morning, everyone will know the truth." Eleanor smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. 40 years of waiting. Finally, they'll have to answer for what they've done. The conference room grew quiet as the team began gathering their materials. Outside, police lights still flashed against the dark windows. The protesters showed no signs of leaving, their shadows moving in the street like restless spirits awaiting judgment. Dawn broke over the city skyline as Ayla sat in her office, finger hovering over the send button. The email was simple: "Release now." With a deep breath, she pressed down. Within minutes, notifications flooded her phone. Headlines exploded across every major news network. Harrington Dynasty exposed. Decades of discrimination and financial fraud. Exclusive. Inside the Harrington family's web of corruption. Breaking, federal investigation launched into Harrington Energy Group. Devon burst into her office, tablet in hand. It's everywhere. Every single outlet picked it up. Social media is on fire. Ayla watched as Eleanor's carefully preserved evidence spread across the nation. News anchors read directly from internal memos showing systematic wage discrimination. Financial analysts dissected proof of massive tax evasion schemes. Civil rights leaders demanded immediate federal action. "Look at their stock," Devon said, pulling up the market tracker. Harrington Energy Group shares were falling like stones. Down 30% in the first hour of trading. Security footage from their camera feeds showed the crowd outside had tripled since dawn. Supporters waved signs with Ayla's quotes from her TV interview. "Stand against privilege. Justice for Eleanor. Brightwave shows the way," Marisol called from the legal department. "The SEC just announced a formal investigation. They're sending agents to Harrington headquarters right now." Live helicopter footage showed federal agents entering the Harrington Energy building. Employees streamed out, many carrying boxes of personal items, afraid to be associated with the scandal. "Harrington Board of Directors calling emergency session," Devon reported, reading from his phone. "Major shareholders demanding Gregory's immediate removal." Eleanor arrived mid-morning, tears in her eyes as she watched her decades of careful documentation tear down the empire that had caused so much pain. "I never thought I'd see this day," she whispered. The evidence was undeniable. Eleanor's meticulous records provided dates, times, and witnesses. The financial fraud stretched back generations. Tax evasion, embezzlement, money laundering through charity foundations. But it was the human stories that captured public attention. News programs interviewed former employees, their faces blurred, describing systematic abuse and discrimination. Maria Torres, the woman fired before Christmas in 1998, finally told her story on national television. Other victims came forward, their accounts matching Eleanor's documentation perfectly. By noon, Harrington Energy stock had been temporarily suspended from trading after falling over 50%. Investment firms began publicly distancing themselves. Partner companies issued statements condemning discrimination. "Gregory's been suspended," Devon announced, reading a press release. "Board voted unanimously. They're appointing an interim CEO while federal investigations proceed. Live footage showed Melissa Harrington outside their mansion, screaming at reporters. "This is a conspiracy. She manipulated that poor old woman. We built this city." Her perfectly maintained facade had cracked, mascara running down her face as security dragged her inside. Preston's private school released a statement saying he would take a leave of absence to focus on family matters. Photos circulated of him being rushed into a waiting car, his face hidden behind designer sunglasses. Ayla's phone rang constantly. Supporters, investors, journalists. But she stayed in her office, watching justice unfold with quiet satisfaction. This wasn't just about her humiliation at the gala anymore. This was about every person the Harringtons had ever hurt. Federal agents just left Harrington headquarters, Marisol reported mid-afternoon. They took over 30 boxes of documents. Gregory's private office was sealed as a crime scene. Social media exploded with clips of Gregory being escorted from the building, his usual arrogant smirk replaced by tight-lipped fury. Hashtags trended. Harrington crimes. Justice for Ayla. Eleanor the hero. The protest outside Brightwave had become a celebration. People danced in the streets, sharing stories of their own experiences with corporate discrimination. Civil rights leaders gave impromptu speeches about the power of standing up to systemic abuse. Eleanor's phone started ringing. Other former Harrington employees wanting to share their stories. "They're not afraid anymore," she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "They can finally speak up." By late afternoon, the Harrington Foundation announced cancellation of all upcoming events. Corporate sponsors pulled their support. Society figures who had laughed at Ayla's humiliation now scrambled to express their shock and disapproval. "You should see this," Devin said, showing Ayla his tablet. A video was trending, security footage from the gala, showing Preston's wine attack from multiple angles. But now people weren't laughing. They were analyzing the casual cruelty, the entitled smirk, the parents' encouraging laughter. As evening fell, Ayla finally left her office. The celebration outside had grown into a block party. People cheered as her car emerged from the garage. Signs waved, "Thank you, Ayla!" "Black Excellence!" "Eleanor's Army!" For the first time since the wine had dripped down her neck at the gala, Ayla felt truly victorious. The truth had come out. Justice was being served. The mighty Harrington Empire was crumbling under the weight of its own corruption. Her driver took a longer route home to avoid the media crews camped outside her building. Ayla leaned back, finally allowing herself to relax. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Devin. She opened it, expecting more good news about the Harringtons' downfall. Instead, his words sent ice through her veins. "You need to see what the Harringtons just released." Ayla's hands shook as she grabbed her TV remote. Breaking news banners flashed across every channel. There was Preston Harrington III, sitting beside famous interviewer Mitchell Grant, tears streaming down his face. "I was so scared," Preston sobbed, his designer suit making him look even younger than 14. "She cornered me backstage before the gala started. She said if my family didn't give her company what she wanted, she'd destroy us." Mitchell Grant leaned forward, his face a mask of practiced concern. "That must have been terrifying for you, Preston." "You're just a child." "I didn't know what to do," Preston whimpered, dabbing his eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "She was so aggressive. That's why I acted out. I was just scared and trying to protect myself." The camera cut to Melissa Harrington, holding her son's hand. Her earlier hysteria had been replaced by cold composure. No child should feel threatened by a CEO throwing a temper tantrum over business negotiations. Ayla's phone exploded with notifications. Devin was calling, Marisol was texting, her board members were emailing. but she couldn't look away from the screen as Gregory Harrington appeared, looking somber. "We didn't want to release this footage," he said gravely. "We hoped to protect everyone involved. But given the vicious attacks on our family's reputation, we feel the public deserves to see the truth." The screen switched to grainy security footage. It showed what appeared to be Ayla approaching Preston in a dim hallway, her body language aggressive. The timestamp matched the gala date. The figure's finger jabbed toward Preston's chest as he cowered against the wall. "Our security team enhanced the audio," Gregory continued. A distorted voice played, "Teach you what happens. Mess with me. Your whole family." Ayla's stomach lurched. She had never spoken to Preston before the wine incident. She'd never even seen him backstage. The footage was completely fabricated. Her phone kept buzzing. She finally answered Devon's call. "It's everywhere," he said, his voice tight. "Social media is split. Half are calling it obvious manipulation, but people are questioning everything now. Ayla threatens is trending." "That video is fake," Ayla said, her voice hoarse. Titanium Solutions just released a statement. Devon cut in. "They're suspending all contracts with Brightwave pending a full investigation." Titanium Solutions was their biggest client. Without their contracts, Brightwave would lose millions per quarter. Her other line beeped. It was Marisol. "The board is calling an emergency session," the lawyer reported. "They're scheduling a vote on your leadership position." Outside, car doors slammed. Voices shouted. Ayla went to her window and saw reporters swarming her front yard. Police cars lined the street, but officers simply watched as photographers climbed over her garden. Her security system chimed. The cameras showed more people gathering in the back alley. Someone threw something at her wall. "Ms. Morton," her house security guard called through the intercom, "you need to step away from the windows. We can't guarantee your safety if you remain visible." The interview was still playing. Preston was crying harder now. "I just want her to leave my family alone. We never did anything to her." Melissa stroked his hair, her eyes glistening with practiced tears. "First she tried to intimidate a child. Then she fabricated horrible lies about our company. She's clearly unstable and unfit to run a corporation." Ayla's personal phone lit up with a text from her mother. "Baby, are you okay? Please tell me you're safe." Before she could respond, Devon called again. "Ayla, I'm looking at the preliminary market projections. When trading opens tomorrow—" A crash interrupted him. Breaking glass. Shouts from her security team. Red and blue police lights strobed through her windows. "Ma'am," her guard's voice was urgent now. "Someone broke through the perimeter. We need to move you to the panic room." Ayla let them guide her downstairs. As they passed her front door, she saw what had been spray-painted across it. Vicious racial slurs in dripping red paint. The police finally moved forward, but only to form a line protecting the media crews from her security team. No one was arresting the vandals. No one was stopping the photographers from documenting her defaced home. Her phone kept buzzing with news alerts. Brightwave CEO accused of threatening minor. Morton empire built on intimidation. Investors question Brightwave leadership. Board to vote on Morton's future. Inside the panic room, multiple screens showed security feeds. She watched strangers trample her gardens, destroy her property, debate her character on live television. The falsified video played on repeat, getting grainier with each share, the lies spreading faster than truth ever could. Her private line rang. The board chairman. "Ayla, given these serious allegations, we've scheduled an emergency vote for tomorrow morning regarding your position as CEO. I suggest you bring legal representation." She ended the call without responding. On every screen, Preston's tearful face played on loop. The doctored footage showed that dark figure who wasn't her, threatening a child who had actually assaulted her. The truth was being buried under an avalanche of manufactured evidence and weaponized white tears. Alone in her fortified room, surrounded by screens showing the destruction of everything she'd built, Ayla Morton, the woman who had never broken, never backed down, never let them see her crack, finally shattered. She slid down the wall, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The screens kept flickering with police lights, camera flashes, endlessly looping footage of a crime she'd never committed. Outside, voices shouted for her downfall. Inside, decades of accumulated pain broke through her carefully maintained walls. The false security video played again, and again, and again. Each time, the lies grew more convincing. Each time, her truth felt smaller, weaker, further away. In the darkness of her panic room, Ayla Morton wept. Ayla's eyes snapped open in the dim panic room. Her neck ached from sleeping against the wall. The security feeds still flickered on multiple screens, showing a quieter scene outside, just a few determined photographers camping in their cars. Her phone showed 5:47 a.m. She'd managed barely an hour of rest, but adrenaline was already coursing through her veins. The humiliation of breaking down felt distant now, replaced by a familiar spark of defiance. A gentle knock echoed through the reinforced door. "Ms. Morton," her head of security called. "Mr. Shaw and Ms. Reed are here." Ayla smoothed her wrinkled clothes and checked her reflection in her phone. Even after everything, she wouldn't let them see her disheveled. "Let them in." Devon burst through the door first, his usually pristine suit rumpled from a sleepless night. "I've been analyzing their media strategy. The timing, the platforms they chose, the specific outlets. It's too perfect. They've been planning this for weeks." Eleanor entered more slowly, her aged face lined with concern. She carried a thermos and a paper bag. "You need to eat something, child. Can't fight on an empty stomach." The familiar scent of Eleanor's homemade coffee filled the room as she poured a cup. Ayla accepted it gratefully, the warm ceramic grounding her. "Show me that video again," Ayla said, setting her cup down. "The raw file, not the broadcast version." Devon pulled up the security footage on the main screen. They watched in silence as the grainy figure meant to be Ayla confronted Preston in that shadowy hallway. "Frame by frame," Ayla commanded. "Slow it down." They analyzed each moment, looking for inconsistencies. Eleanor took notes while Devon marked timestamps of suspicious segments. "There!" Ayla suddenly pressed pause. "Look at the reflection in that door handle." They leaned closer. In the curved brass surface, a faint reflection showed the hallway, empty except for a cleaning cart. "Timestamp," Ayla demanded. 19:42:15, Devon read. "But in the main footage, that's when you're supposedly threatening Preston." Ayla's eyes lit up. The reflection doesn't match the action. They digitally inserted figures into existing hallway footage, but forgot about reflective surfaces. Eleanor smiled grimly. "Sloppy work. They rushed it. Get me everything you can about the security system at the venue," Ayla told Devon. "Installation dates, maintenance records, hardware specs. And find me a top digital forensics expert. Someone who can testify about video manipulation." Her phone buzzed. The SEC announced a formal investigation into both Brightwave and Harrington Energy, citing serious concerns about corporate conduct and financial disclosures. "They're trying to drown us in regulatory paperwork," Devon growled. "No," Ayla said, standing straighter. "They're giving us a chance to present evidence to federal authorities. Everything Eleanor documented about their financial crimes, it just became relevant to an official investigation." She moved to the tactical desk in the corner, spreading out papers. "The board meeting is in 3 hours. They expect me to come groveling, playing defense against Preston's accusations." "But you're not going to do that," Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. No. I'm going to present our complete counteroffensive strategy. Full disclosure of Eleanor's evidence. Technical proof the video was doctored. Documentation of their coordinated media manipulation. Ayla's voice grew stronger with each point. They thought they could bury the truth under a crying child's testimony. They were wrong. Devon was already typing on his tablet. I'll start calling friendly journalists. We need to line up coverage that can't be killed by Harrington influence. Good. Ayla nodded. But I want something bigger. Something they can't edit or spin. She paused, then declared, I want a live press conference, tomorrow morning. No delays, no pre-recorded statements. Just me, speaking directly to the world. Eleanor touched her arm gently. They'll try to stop you. They might even try to hurt you. They already tried that, Ayla replied, gesturing to the security feeds showing her vandalized home. They threw everything they had at me last night. I broke down, yes, but I got back up. That's what they don't understand about people like us, Eleanor. We've been getting back up our whole lives. She turned to Devon. Get me the biggest venue available. I want capacity for every major network. No press passes for anyone tied to Harrington Holdings. Full security sweep before we start. What about the board meeting? Devon asked, concern crossing his face. I'll give them their vote, Ayla said firmly. But first, I'll show them exactly what's coming. They can either stand with me while we expose decades of corruption, or they can try to replace me and watch their stock price evaporate when I release everything independently. She squared her shoulders, feeling strength flow back into her spine. The woman who had wept alone last night was still there, but she wasn't broken. She was transformed. Like steel through fire, she had emerged harder, sharper, more dangerous. Devon, start calling venues. Eleanor, we need to organize your files for maximum impact. I want a clear, irrefutable timeline of their crimes. Her phone buzzed again. More reporters requesting comments, more investors expressing concern, more social media debates about her character. Let them talk, she thought. Let them speculate and scheme and spin their lies. Tomorrow, she would speak her truth, and no amount of manufactured evidence could drown out her voice. Ms. Morton, her security chief called through the intercom. The car is ready whenever you want to head to the office. Ayla gathered her materials, checked her reflection one final time, and lifted her chin. Time to remind them who I am. She scheduled the press conference for 9 a.m. the next morning, knowing that timing would dominate the entire news cycle. It would be her moment to rewrite the narrative, not through leaked videos or manipulated interviews, but through raw, unfiltered truth. As she prepared to leave the panic room, Eleanor pressed another cup of coffee into her hands. Make them regret every lie they told, the older woman whispered fiercely. Ayla nodded, her resolve hardening into diamond. Tomorrow would be her final stand, but today, she would lay the groundwork for justice. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hastily assembled outdoor stage. Camera crews jostled for position, while hundreds of phones pointed upward like digital sunflowers. The air crackled with tension as Ayla Morton emerged from the wings, her steps measured and deliberate. She wore a crisp white suit, a deliberate choice that highlighted the contrast with her wine-stained gown from the gala. Her heels clicked against the wooden platform as she approached the podium. Behind her, a massive screen hummed to life. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and unwavering. "3 days ago, a child poured wine on my head while his parents laughed. Today, I'm going to show you why that moment wasn't just about ruined silk. It was about exposed corruption." She gestured to the screen where the Harringtons' doctored security footage began to play. "This video was released yesterday, showing what they claim was me threatening Preston Harrington III. Watch carefully." The footage rolled in slow motion. Ayla directed attention to specific frames, her laser pointer highlighting key details. Notice the reflection in this brass door handle at timestamp 1942-15. While the main footage shows two people in heated confrontation, the reflection shows an empty hallway with only a cleaning cart. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Technical experts in white lab coats stepped forward, presenting their credentials before walking the audience through metadata analysis. The video file contains clear markers of Adobe Premiere Pro editing software, explained Dr. Sarah Walsh, digital forensics expert. Timestamp data shows manipulation occurring at 3:47 a.m. yesterday morning, hours before its release. Ayla clicked to the next slide. But this isn't just about one doctored video. This is about decades of systematic abuse and corruption. She motioned off stage. Ms. Eleanor Reed, please join me. Eleanor walked slowly to the podium, carrying her weathered satchel. The elderly woman's hands shook slightly as she withdrew a stack of notebooks. For 27 years, I worked in the Harrington household. Eleanor's voice carried clearly across the hushed crowd. I documented everything I witnessed. She opened the first journal. March 15, 1995. Gregory Harrington ordered me to falsify cleaning staff payroll, deducting hours from immigrant workers who couldn't protest. She continued reading entries, each more damning than the last. Recordings played over the speakers, Gregory Harrington's voice crystal clear as he ordered evidence destroyed, threatened employees, and discussed illegal financial schemes. Ayla stepped forward again. What you're hearing isn't just workplace misconduct. It's organized criminal activity. She clicked through financial documents. These records show systematic wage theft exceeding $12 million. These memos detail intentional discrimination in hiring practices. And these emails, she paused for effect, prove the Harringtons plan to use our partnership to hide embezzled funds. Gasps erupted as she displayed internal correspondence about the 650 meters deal. They never intended to honor our contract. They needed it to cover missing money before their next audit. The evidence mounted methodically. Whistleblower documents appeared on screen, showing panicked messages between Harrington executives as they scrambled to destroy records. Security camera footage revealed teams shredding documents late into the night. But perhaps most disturbing, Ayla continued, is their response to being exposed. She pulled up photographs of her vandalized home, the racial slurs clearly visible. When they couldn't silence me with lawsuits, they resorted to hate crimes. When they couldn't bully me with financial pressure, they attacked my character with manufactured evidence. She faced the cameras directly. To my board members watching, this is why I cannot be removed as CEO. Not because I cling to power, but because removing me would reward criminal intimidation. It would tell every corrupt dynasty that they can maintain control through fear and fabrication. The crowd had grown so silent you could hear the wind rustling through nearby trees. Phones remained raised, live streaming every word to millions watching globally. I stand here today not just as Ayla Morton, CEO of Brightwave Innovations, she declared. I stand as every person who has been told to stay quiet in the face of injustice. Every worker who has been cheated. Every voice that has been silenced by power and privilege. Eleanor stepped forward again, placing a final stack of documents on the podium. These are copies of everything. All evidence has been provided to relevant authorities. As if on cue, dark vehicles with federal markings began moving in the distance, heading toward Harrington Energy's headquarters. Ayla noticed them, but kept her focus on the crowd. The time for backroom deals and buried truths is over, she said firmly. Every document presented today is being made public. Every recording will be available for verification. Let other corporations take note. You cannot hide corruption behind manufactured outrage. You cannot bury justice under false accusations. She gathered her materials, standing tall. Thank you for your attention. There will be no questions at this time, as all evidence is now part of an active federal investigation. The reporters erupted in shouts and questions, but Ayla turned away from the podium. She helped Eleanor collect her journals, supporting the older woman's elbow as they walked off stage together. Behind them, the massive screen displayed a frozen frame of the doctored video, its fatal flaw highlighted for all to see. As they reached the wings, Devon rushed forward with updates. The board just emailed. They're postponing the removal vote indefinitely. And our stock, it's already climbing. Ayla nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the federal vehicles now visible through gaps in the crowd. The wheels of justice were finally turning, grinding slowly but inexorably toward Harrington Energy's gleaming corporate towers. Eleanor squeezed her arm. They thought they could break you, she whispered. They forgot something important, Ayla replied, watching the agents approach. Truth doesn't break. It only gets stronger under pressure. The glass doors of Harrington Energy headquarters reflected the midday sun like a fortress of light. Inside, employees pressed against windows, watching federal vehicles surround the building. Agents in dark jackets moved with practiced precision, securing exits and establishing a perimeter. Gregory Harrington stood in his top-floor office, yanking open desk drawers and stuffing papers into his briefcase. Sweat darkened his collar as his hands trembled, dropping documents across Italian marble floors. Security cameras captured his desperate movements as he grabbed his phone, barking orders. Shut everything down. Delete the servers. I don't care about protocols. Do it now. His voice cracked with panic. The elevator dinged repeatedly as agents ascended floor by floor. Gregory loosened his tie, glancing between his private elevator and the emergency stairs. Footsteps echoed through the hallway, growing closer. He made his choice, darting toward the executive elevator. FBI! Stop where you are! The command boomed through his office door. Gregory slammed the elevator button repeatedly, cursing under his breath. When the doors didn't open fast enough, he spun toward the emergency exit. He burst through the stairwell door, taking steps 2 at a time, his expensive shoes skidding on polished concrete. 6 floors down, he heard doors banging open above him. Voices echoed in the stairwell. Gregory's breathing came in ragged gasps as he descended, his briefcase banging against the railing. Somewhere above, an agent radioed his position. On the ground floor, Gregory shoved through the emergency exit into blinding sunlight. News cameras swung toward him. Reporters shouted questions. He sprinted across the plaza, briefcase flailing. Gregory Harrington, freeze! He ignored the commands, running faster. His tie whipped behind him as he headed for the underground parking garage. 20 yards, 15, 10. The first agent caught him at full sprint, tackling him from behind. Gregory's feet left the ground. Time seemed to slow as he fell, his face meeting concrete with a sickening crack. Blood spurted from his nose, staining his white collar crimson. The briefcase burst open, scattering papers across the plaza. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing his grimace as agents cuffed him. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting his humiliation live across the nation. Gregory thrashed and cursed, blood dripping down his chin. "Get off me! Do you know who I am?" he screamed, spitting red. "Gregory Harrington," the agent replied calmly, tightening the cuffs. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering." Across town, another team of agents surrounded the Harrington mansion. Melissa Harrington stood in her marble foyer, still wearing designer sleepwear, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as federal vehicles rolled up her circular driveway. "They can't do this!" she hissed, furiously deleting messages on her phone. "We're Harringtons!" Agents knocked once, then broke down the carved mahogany door. Melissa screamed as they entered, dropping her phone. She tried to crush it under her heel, but an agent swept it away with a gloved hand. "Attempting to destroy evidence," he noted coldly, securing the device in an evidence bag. "Add that to the charges." Melissa fought as they cuffed her, designer bracelets clinking against steel. "My lawyer will destroy you. All of you." "Your lawyer's under investigation too, Mrs. Harrington," the agent replied, leading her outside where news crews had gathered. Her silk robe fluttered in the wind as cameras documented her walk of shame to a waiting vehicle. Inside the mansion, investigators methodically swept each room. They found shredded documents, hidden safes, and a basement room full of servers. Computer forensics teams set up equipment, beginning the long process of recovering deleted files. At Preston's private school, counselors and child services representatives waited in the headmaster's office. Preston slouched in an oversized leather chair, his usual smirk replaced by genuine fear as they explained he would be removed from school for mandatory psychological evaluation and rehabilitation. "But I didn't do anything wrong," he protested weakly. "My parents said." "Your parents," the counselor interrupted gently, "taught you some very harmful things. We're here to help you understand why they were wrong." Across the city in a quiet cafe, Ayla sat with Eleanor, legal documents spread between their coffee cups. Devin hovered nearby, monitoring news updates on his tablet. "The protection order is ironclad," Ayla assured Eleanor, sliding papers forward. "You'll have round-the-clock security, and the whistleblower fund will ensure you never have to worry about finances again." Eleanor's weathered hands trembled as she signed. All those years of keeping quiet, watching them hurt people. She wiped away tears. "I never thought I'd see justice." "You made it possible." Ayla squeezed her hand. "Your courage brought down an empire of corruption." Devin rushed over, tablet extended. "You need to see this. Harrington Energy stock is in freefall. Trading's been halted." They watched the numbers plummet in real time. Emergency notifications flashed. Board of Directors calling emergency session. Major shareholders demanding total leadership change. Banking partners suspending credit lines. Ayla's phone buzzed with a message from her inside source. Board vote unanimous. Entire Harrington family removed from all positions. Company to be restructured under new leadership. Eleanor stared at the updates, decades of tension finally leaving her shoulders. "It's really over?" "Their power is broken," Ayla confirmed, reading more incoming reports. "The Harrington dynasty ends today." Outside, sirens wailed as more federal vehicles raced through the city. News helicopters tracked their movement, broadcasting the dismantling of an empire in real time. In offices across the country, employees gathered around screens, watching justice unfold with a satisfaction that felt almost physical. The sun climbed higher, casting no shadows for the mighty to hide in. There would be no deals, no golden parachutes, no comfortable exits. Only consequences, served cold and public, exactly as they deserved. Evening shadows stretched across Brightwave's glass-walled boardroom as Ayla straightened her jacket. 30 pairs of eyes watched her take her seat at the head of the long mahogany table. The emergency board meeting had been called hours after Gregory Harrington's arrest, and tension hung thick in the air. Board members shuffled papers nervously. Some had pushed for her removal just days ago. Now they avoided her gaze, embarrassed by their wavering loyalty. Ayla remained expressionless, her calm presence filling the room. "Before we begin," Charles Weber, the lead director, cleared his throat. "I believe we owe you an apology, Ayla. Our faith should have been stronger." Ayla raised her hand. "What matters isn't the past week's doubt, but the path forward. Brightwave's mission remains unchanged. innovative technology built on ethical foundations. Devon entered carrying a stack of folders, nodding to Eleanor, who sat in a chair near the wall. Her presence was unusual for a board meeting, but Ayla had insisted. The woman who helped save the company deserved to witness its renewal. First item, Weber announced, the vote regarding leadership. He straightened his glasses. All in favor of reaffirming Ayla Morton as CEO, raise your hand. Hands shot up around the table without hesitation. Weber counted quickly, then smiled. The vote is unanimous. Ayla Morton remains Chief Executive Officer with the board's complete confidence. Applause broke out, echoing off the glass walls. Ayla accepted the validation with a slight nod, already focused on next steps. Thank you. Now, let's address our partnerships and financial stability. Devon stepped forward, distributing materials. I have excellent news. Quantum Solutions, our largest client, has just reinstated their full contract. He pulled up slides on the wall screen. They cited, and I quote, Ms. Morton's unwavering integrity in the face of corruption as their primary reason. Relief swept through the room. The quantum contract represented nearly 30% of their annual revenue. Its suspension had sparked panic across the company. Additionally, Devon continued, we've received 17 new partnership offers in the last 4 hours. He displayed logos of major tech and energy companies. Many specifically mentioned being impressed by our ethical stance and Ayla's leadership during the crisis. Board members leaned forward, examining the potential deals. The combined value exceeded $2 billion, more than 3 times the cancelled Harrington contract. Ayla studied each proposal carefully. Remove Novatech and Riverside Energy from consideration, she said firmly. Their environmental records don't meet our standards. But Nova's offer alone is worth, a board member began. Our integrity isn't for sale, Ayla cut in. That's what separates us from the Harringtons. We'll partner with companies that share our values, not just our profit goals. Heads nodded around the table. Her unwavering principles had just saved the company. No one would question them now. The CFO presented updated projections showing Brightwave's stock recovering rapidly. Investors who'd pulled back were already reaching out to reinstate their commitments. The company would emerge stronger than before the crisis. There's one more matter, Ayla said, standing. She walked to where Eleanor sat quietly. Brightwave wouldn't be here without Eleanor Reed's courage, her dedication to truth, her meticulous documentation, her willingness to finally speak out. These brought down decades of corruption. Eleanor blushed, trying to wave off the attention, but Ayla continued. Therefore, I'm establishing the Eleanor Reed Whistleblower Protection Fund with an initial $50 million commitment from Brightwave. It will support employees who expose corporate wrongdoing, ensuring they have legal and financial protection. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes as the board members applauded. Decades of silence had transformed into a legacy of justice. Additionally, Ayla announced, Eleanor will join Brightwave's Ethics Advisory Board, helping ensure we never stray from our principles. Devon stepped up again, tablet in hand. We're already receiving positive press about the fund. Several other companies are considering similar programs. The meeting continued with operational updates. Department heads reported minimal disruption despite the crisis. Employee morale had actually improved, with many expressing pride in working for a company that stood up to corruption. As the sun set outside the windows, Ayla reviewed the day's victories. Brightwave hadn't just survived, it had become a symbol of corporate accountability. The Harrington attack had backfired spectacularly, strengthening everything it meant to destroy. Final item, Weber announced. The board proposes an immediate company-wide bonus to thank our employees for their loyalty during this crisis. All in favor? Another unanimous vote. Ayla smiled, thinking of the families this would help. Even in triumph, she remembered her roots and the importance of taking care of people. As the meeting concluded, board members approached to personally express their support. Some apologized again for doubting her. Ayla accepted each conversation graciously, already focused on tomorrow's challenges. Eleanor hugged her tightly. "You didn't just win," she whispered. "You changed things. Really changed them." Devon appeared at Ayla's side. "The lobby's full of employees. They've been waiting to see you." Ayla straightened her jacket again and headed for the elevator. Eleanor and Devon flanked her as the doors opened onto the ground floor. The sound hit her first, hundreds of people clapping, cheering, some wiping away tears. The lobby was packed with Brightwave employees from every department. Security guards and custodians stood alongside engineers and executives. Signs reading, "We stand with Ayla," dotted the crowd. Stepping out of the elevator, Ayla felt the full weight of their support. These were the people who mattered, not corrupt dynasties or power brokers, but honest workers who believed in building something meaningful. The morning sun painted golden stripes across the marble floors of the vacant building, as Ayla and Eleanor's footsteps echoed through the empty halls. The former bank headquarters, with its soaring ceilings and classical columns, stood in the heart of downtown, a perfect location for what Ayla envisioned. "It needs work," Eleanor said, running her hand along a dusty banister, "but it has good bones." "Like the best of us," Ayla replied, watching Eleanor take in the space. The older woman moved slowly, absorbing every detail of the grand staircase and ornate moldings. "What do you see when you look at this place?" Eleanor paused, her eyes distant. "I see possibility. All those years working for families like the Harringtons, we had to use back doors, service entrances. This place, it has a presence, dignity." "Exactly." Ayla's heels clicked against the marble as she joined Eleanor at the window. Outside, morning traffic flowed past, the city already humming with energy. "That's why it's perfect for the Eleanor Reed Justice Institute." Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. "The what?" "Your name deserves to be on something that matters," Ayla said softly. "Something that will help others find their voice, just like you found yours." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes as Ayla outlined her vision. The Institute would provide legal support for whistleblowers, fund advocacy for marginalized workers, and create safe spaces for victims of systemic abuse to share their stories. The grand entrance hall would become a welcome center, where no one would ever be forced to use a back door again. "The East Wing will house our legal clinic," Ayla explained, guiding Eleanor through the space. "Free representation for workers facing discrimination, retaliation, or unsafe conditions. The West Wing becomes our education and advocacy center, teaching people their rights, training future organizers, documenting oral histories." Eleanor wiped her eyes. "It's too much. I'm just one person who kept some records." "You're so much more than that," Ayla insisted. "Your courage didn't just help take down the Harringtons. It showed others they can fight back too. This institute will make sure they have the support they need to do it." Devon arrived with architects and contractors in tow, tablets and blueprints ready. Ayla had pushed for rapid renovation, wanting the institute operational within months. As they reviewed plans, Eleanor watched in amazement as each space was assigned a purpose. The former bank vault would become a secure archive, protecting evidence and testimonies. Conference rooms would host support groups and strategy sessions. A state-of-the-art media center would amplify marginalized voices through podcasts, documentaries, and digital storytelling. "The funding is already secured," Devon reported, pulling up spreadsheets. Brightwave's initial commitment sparked a wave of donations. People really connected with this fight. Indeed, supporters across the country had been moved by Eleanor's story. Retired domestic workers, former service staff, and elderly victims of workplace abuse saw themselves in her decades of silent documentation. Their donations, though often small, carried powerful messages of solidarity. "Look at this," Devin said, showing them his tablet. Comments flooded the Institute's newly launched website. "Finally, someone sees us. I kept records too. Now I know I'm not alone. Thank you for giving us courage." Eleanor dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. "I never imagined—" "That's exactly why this matters," Ayla said firmly. "Too many people think they have to suffer in silence. The Institute will show them otherwise." By midday, the empty building buzzed with activity. Contractors measured and marked, their plans transforming the space from concept to reality. The media arrived, cameras capturing Eleanor's emotional reaction as Ayla detailed the Institute's mission. "This isn't charity," Ayla told reporters. "This is justice. This is about building power for people who've been denied it." Eleanor showed us that one person's evidence can topple an empire of corruption. Imagine what we can do when we support thousands of Eleanors. The story spread quickly. Major networks praised Brightwave's commitment to structural change. Civil rights organizations pledged partnership. Universities requested collaboration on research projects. Even corporate leaders reached out, sensing a shift in public demands for accountability. Eleanor watched it all with quiet amazement. In the afternoon sun, she stood in what would become her office, a corner room with tall windows and a view of the city she'd served invisibly for so long. "I spent my life trying not to be noticed," she said softly, "keeping my head down, staying quiet, documenting everything because I thought that's all I could do." Ayla squeezed her shoulder. "And now your name will help others stand tall." The renovation timeline was aggressive. Construction crews would work double shifts. Hiring committees were already reviewing applications for staff positions. Legal experts were drafting protocols for whistleblower protection. "The donations keep coming," Devin reported, showing another surge in support, especially from seniors. "They're writing the most powerful messages." One note particularly moved Eleanor. "I cleaned houses for 40 years, kept every pay stub, every harsh word, every slight. Thought I'd take it all to my grave. Now I know it wasn't for nothing." As afternoon faded toward evening, Ayla and Eleanor made one final walk through their future institute. Their footsteps still echoed, but now they could hear the promise in every sound. Justice approaching, silence breaking, dignity restored. Devin caught up with them near the entrance, waving an envelope. "Ayla, this just came by courier. You've been invited to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award at next month's Civil Rights Alliance Gala." Ayla opened the invitation, her expression unreadable. The venue listed was painfully familiar. The same ballroom where Preston Harrington had poured wine over her head, where his parents had laughed, where everything had begun. 1 week later, Ayla stood outside the same grand ballroom doors where everything had changed. The polished brass handles felt different under her fingers now. No longer symbols of exclusion, but proof of transformation. She smoothed her shimmering midnight blue gown, took a deep breath, and nodded to the attendants. The doors swung open. 1,000 faces turned. For a heartbeat, time seemed suspended. Then the crowd rose as one, erupting in thunderous applause that rolled through the ballroom like waves. Ayla walked forward, each step measured and dignified, just as she had that fateful night. But this time, instead of whispers and judgment, she moved through an ocean of support. "Look at her go," someone whispered. "That's what grace looks like." The same crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, but their light felt warmer now. The same marble floors echoed under her heels, but they carried her toward triumph instead of humiliation. Faces both familiar and new beamed at her. Civil rights leaders, former domestic workers, corporate reformers, and young activists who had taken up her cause. Eleanor sat in the front row, elegant in deep purple silk, her eyes bright with pride. Beside her were Devon, Marisol, and other Brightwave team members who had stood firm through the storm. They formed a wall of solidarity, their presence a reminder that true victory was never won alone. The Civil Rights Alliance chairman approached the podium. "Tonight, we honor more than achievement. We celebrate the courage to stand against injustice, no matter its pedigree or power. We recognize a leader who turned personal humiliation into systemic transformation." A montage began playing on the giant screens. There was the viral video of Preston's wine attack, but now it played like a prelude to justice rather than an act of cruelty. The footage rolled forward. Ayla's calm announcement canceling the deal, Eleanor stepping forward with evidence, the federal raids on Harrington headquarters, Gregory Harrington's arrest, the family's removal from power. Then came the brighter scenes, the Eleanor Reed Justice Institute taking shape, whistleblowers finding protection, workers claiming their dignity, and a new generation learning to fight systemic abuse. The ballroom watched in rapt attention as the story unfolded, many wiping away tears. When Ayla took the stage to accept her award, the applause swelled again. She stood at the podium, crystal trophy gleaming beside her, and surveyed the room that had witnessed both her lowest and highest moments. "One night in this very room," she began, her voice clear and strong, "a young boy thought he could pour wine on my head and face no consequences. His parents thought they could laugh because generations of privilege had taught them they were untouchable. They assumed power meant never having to answer for cruelty." She paused, letting the words settle. But true power isn't inherited. It isn't granted by wealth or status. True power comes from refusing to accept injustice, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has ever been told to stay quiet, to use the back door, to accept humiliation as their due. The screens showed Eleanor's decades of careful documentation, the meticulous records that had helped topple an empire. Change doesn't always announce itself with speeches and protests. Sometimes it grows in silence, in the careful notes of a domestic worker who refuses to let truth die. Sometimes it waits years, gathering strength, until the moment comes to transform personal pain into collective justice. Ayla gestured to the Institute footage playing behind her. "We're building something bigger than revenge. We're creating spaces where dignity isn't a privilege, but a right, where evidence matters more than influence, where no one has to spend decades waiting for justice because they lack power or connections." The cameras panned across faces in the crowd. Elderly workers who had donated their savings to the Institute, young lawyers volunteering at the legal clinics, tech workers building secure platforms for whistleblowers. This award doesn't mark an ending. It's a reminder that justice isn't a moment. It's a constant choice to stand firm, to protect truth, to lift others as we rise. The Harringtons thought they could break me with public humiliation. Instead, they helped launch a movement that will outlast their name. Eleanor dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief as the room erupted in fresh applause. The screens showed the Institute's growing impact. Hundreds of cases won, thousands of workers protected, millions reached through advocacy and education. After the ceremony, Ayla found Eleanor in a quiet corner of the ballroom. They stood together, watching the celebration continue around them. "Did you ever imagine that night would lead to this?" Eleanor asked softly. Ayla shook her head. "I was just trying to keep my dignity. You were the one who showed me it could become something larger." "We both kept records," Eleanor smiled. "You of financial fraud, me of daily cruelties. Together they told the whole truth. They watched young activists eagerly networking with civil rights veterans, domestic workers chatting with corporate whistleblowers, lawyers exchanging cards with community organizers. The Institute had created new connections, new possibilities for change. The wine stains never came out of that peach dress, Ayla mused. Good, Eleanor said firmly. Some things shouldn't be erased. They should be transformed. The party continued around them, but Ayla knew it was time. She had faced her past in this room, had reclaimed its meaning, had turned shame into strength. Now she could leave on her own terms. She hugged Eleanor goodbye and made her way toward the exit. The same doors that had witnessed her humiliation now opened onto a future she had helped create. Ayla walked through them with her head high, each step echoing with earned authority. Behind her, the ballroom buzzed with energy, alive with the work of justice. But for Ayla, this chapter was complete. She had done more than survive shame. She had transformed it into lasting change. The doors closed softly behind her, marking not an ending, but a continuation of the work she had chosen, the power she had claimed, the future she would help build. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you.